So Sam said, keep the introduction brief because the conversation will be amazing anyway. And it's a good job he said that because I could wax lyrical about these four individuals, all truly inspirational. Where do I start? Left to right. Christian Dailly, for those of you that follow football, it's one of the few Scottish players ever to go to the World Cup, because it's not really happened that much, is it? And he was the captain of Scotland for many, many caps, played Premiership football for many Premiership clubs, and played till 39 professionally, I think.
39, yeah.
And then decided, rather than go and be a commentator, which seems to be what everybody else kind of does, or sell crisps, decided to do the complete opposite and go back to university and understand metabolic health and understand what makes a better sports person. And today runs with his colleague Emma one of the most amazing gyms I've ever been into in London. Who's ever seen The Greatest Showman? Yeah, the film? Right, so I always say that if anybody was going to make The Great Showman 2, you'd go to his gym, because all he's got the cast ready, right? Because he trains people with one arm. He trains people that have been metabolically challenged for many, many years and brings them out of there. He trains people with MS to do personal bests on deadlifts. The day I was there was a lady that had been given a week to live 2 years before and was still there deadlifting, trying to do a PB the day I was there, and she pulled it off. And it's so, what you do is just out of this world. So this is Christian Dailly, everybody.
Thank you.
Victoria, wow. What's interesting, you're like, we sat this up right actually, because I know you do a bit of rowing, but we're now talking to three rowers. Because Victoria's going to, correct me, I mean, you don't look old enough to be the oldest lady to ever row across the Atlantic.
Apparently so.
Is that right?
At the tender age of 56, I will be the oldest.
Victoria is going to attempt later this year to it's called the toughest rowing race in the world, I think.
World's toughest.
The world's toughest, same words, different order. The world's toughest rowing race, and we're going to get some great insights from her. You might want to talk to James, who's rowed across it.
It's the same race that James did. It's just got a different name now.
Yeah, he had a colleague getting in the way, though. You won't have that problem. So that's Victoria, everybody, and it's going to be really interesting. Shawn Baker probably doesn't need any introduction. I've read your book twice, by the way. First time I read it, I thought, no, my diet's sufficient. And then I put a bit of weight on back end of last year, and I convinced a few of my friends to go carnivore Jan, because I know you was champion carnivore Jan, and we all did it, and the results were amazing. So I read your book again the second time at Christmas last year. My wife really got annoyed with me. By now her menopause is a bit more under control, so it wasn't the normal rant and rave. But you know, I was up every morning reading your book, couldn't put it down. Absolutely fascinating. And Shawn, the carnivore man's going to tell us a lot more about his achievements. Also, you don't think you ever own it, but you have several world records based on fitness, which we'll probably talk about. And then James Cracknell also probably needs no introduction. Double Olympic gold medalist amongst many, many things. You all right to talk anything I want to talk about, James? Or okay. Cool. Whether you know or not, James was cycling across America some years back, 10 years ago, and James is, and I'm not just saying that because he's here, he's the nicest human being I've ever met. And he was cycling across America trying to set some records and all that, and the wind picked up one afternoon, and his crew said, look, you have to stop now. And he said, no, the hotel's 20 miles down the road. And they went, no, stop. So they picked his bike up, put it in the car, and they got to the hotel, and they went, we'll start here in the morning. And James said, no, I won't have done what I set out to do. And they went, no, Bill, no. So he got up silly early in the morning before his crew. Nobody knew he'd got up. Cycled back to where they picked him up. Started cycling again. But within minutes, a lorry came down the motorway, and the wing mirror clipped the back of James's helmet and left him in a coma on the side of Route 66. which left James in a coma with a brain injury, and hence he heads up, or is president of Headway Brain Injury. But he's done brilliant since then, and we're also proud of him, to the point he went back to university in Cambridge. And it was on the rowing machine one day, and what are you doing? He said, well, I'm going to get in, obviously, the Cambridge and Oxford boat race. I know it's got a fancier title than that, but I can never remember. And they went, no, of course you're not, you know. And he trained and he trained and he trained, and they all started to pay a bit more attention, and then he started training the other kids. And anyway, cut a long story short, he got in the Oxford to Cambridge boat race with how many of the rowers? Is it 6? Is it 5? Can't remember.
There's 8. Well,
8 rowers. See, I know nothing about rowing.
7 other rowers.
7 of the rowers. And James said, and this is true, I was older than every one of their dads. And they won. They won the Oxford to Cambridge boat race. So, quite a panel, and it's an honour to sit here with you all. So, where do we start? We want to be fit and healthy for as long as possible. That, I think, has to be the aim. We can all get fit short term to do silly things like run marathons and things like that, but how do we get fit and healthy in the long term? That's going to be the main debate. But I want to kick off with one thing, and that is, most people for many, many years, including myself, were told we were overweight because we were lazy and we weren't exercising, which I knew wasn't true because I was. To what extent, and we'll go around this way, to what extent can you or can't you out-train a poor diet? Sorry, Christian. Yeah, to you. To what extent can you or can't you out-train a poor diet?
I think, well, my experience would tell me that you probably can have the appearance that you're out-training your diet for a period of time. I'd had 5 knee operations before I was 20. Massively fueled on high carbohydrate diet and really high intensity exercise. I had a further 6 operations on my knees over that time as well. Over the following sort of maybe another 15 years that I played or whatever. And I think that experience, and also from what I see on a daily basis and the work that I do every day, is that I think that when your diet is inappropriate, let's say species inappropriate, I think you're on a ticking clock. And it's just a matter of time, whether that's a highly processed food or carbohydrates or seed oils, or and we see issues that's already been touched on with vegan diets as well. And I think you're on a ticking clock, and it's really just a matter of when you can give the appearance that you're out training your diet. We've trained quite a few people who are, and would think they're really fit and really healthy, even doing things like Ironmans and things like that. But all the while we're guiding them, trying to guide them all the time on the nutrition, because you can see that they might be vegan and doing triathlons, and it's just a matter of time before they suffer. And as they get closer and closer to the late 40s, early 50s, they really start to suffer, and it's just a matter of time. Joint issues, hormonal issues, etc., and other issues. So I think, can you out-train a bad diet? No, it'll get you in the end. But you can give the appearance, and that's what's quite difficult about it to start with. When you're younger, you can definitely deal with it metabolically much better.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Victoria, can you out-train a bad diet?
Interesting. I wholeheartedly agree with what Christian said there. I'm an amateur athlete. I mean, I'm in very good company here today. I'm an amateur athlete, runner. I've run for 20 odd years, and latterly, over the last 10 years, I moved into Ironman triathlete. And I've done 3 Ironman races now. And the first of my Ironman races was a sugar burner, traditional, high carb, and on 25 hours of training a week over a year, I put on 10 pounds while I was Ironman training.
You put on 10 pounds doing all that training? Well.
Put on 10 pounds. Fast forward a few years, I then did 2 Ironman races plus a 1,000-mile bike ride, a 7-mile open water swim, etc., as a keto or low-carb athlete. And not only was I 5 years older, I was at the time pre-menopausal. I'm now very much in the middle of menopause. Thanks for the reminder earlier, by the way.
Sorry.
But actually, though, for me, the difference was like night and day. The marginal gains you get from a low-carb or a keto diet is massive. And I think this is one of the biggest growth areas there is, because people don't talk about the marginal gains that are possible. I took 40 minutes off, having done no cycling at all, apart from one cycle ride a week, and I popped out to do a 100-mile bike ride, as you do. It had been postponed from the year before, and I just had a place, so I thought I'll do it anyway. I did no training apart from a 30-mile bike ride once a week and 3 5K runs when I was running a Couch to 5K group. And I took 40 minutes off my 100-mile time trial.
Wow.
With no effort whatsoever.
Well done.
I then consequently went on and could bat out 100 miles in 6 hours, 20 minutes, which in this illustrious company isn't very fast, but for me as a mere amateur, it was amazing. And I'm really interested actually to see what other benefits I can get from it.
Yeah, I mean, you transversed a couple of questions there. I think you're saying you can't out-train a bad diet, but we also talked about fueling exercise. I think we'll come to that as a whole separate topic in a second, because fueling exercise, well, we'll talk about that in a second. Dr. Shawn, can you exercise a really bad diet?
I think you can for a period of time. Just like Christian said, it's a matter of time. It depends how bad the diet is, right? So there's variations of how bad it is and how old you are. I was able to do it until I was early 40s, and then it was like no more. So I think it's eventually going to catch up to most people. And some people, if their diet is moderately bad and they exercise, to James Cracknell's level, may be able to continue to do it for many, many years and maybe even make it throughout their whole life. But I think for the most of us, particularly if it's a highly processed food diet, that's going to catch up pretty quick. And, you've got to be very, very fast to outrun that, but it catches most people.
Yeah, I think it's, I think you can, if that's all you do. The reality is that then you think, okay, actually, if your life is not just about eating and then training, you have a desire to sleep, you have a family, you have a job, you have a suddenly you realise all those things get thrown into the mix, you can't do it. And if say someone's down and watching Britain's Got Talent on a Saturday night and they have a can of Coke and 2 slices of pizza, to burn that off, you've got to walk half an hour to burn off a can of Coke and then 35 minutes for each slice of pizza. You don't think, hang on, that's an hour and a half exercise I've got to do just to do that. And that's not actually that much drink or food. And the recommendations with the government is 2.5 hours of exercise a week. And the biggest reason people give for not managing to do that is not enough time in their week, but yet we manage to watch on average 22.5 hours television. So we have got the time. So it's you can't have on a fork, but also you need to factor it into the mix, which is why say training for the London Marathon is really hard, because it's in April and it's dark all the time. So if you're doing it outside of work, you're running in the night, effectively. So you've just got to work with life as well. And the reality is that we probably don't eat our biggest meal of the day before we go to bed.
Yeah, that's great advice. Can't outrun your fork, you just said. I think that's a great one-liner. I remember you phoning me up the day after you'd done the London Marathon and you were the fastest celebrity that year. I think it was 2 years ago. Highest place.
I thought it was slightly harsh, because I did actually have a job as being vaguely fit. It's not someone who is acting in EastEnders. It's not very fair that they get counted in the same bracket.
No, James, let me finish.
I should be in a sub-bracket.
You phoned me the day up. You phoned me the day after running the London Marathon and said, I'm a bit disappointed. And I said, what's that? I've just watched you. You were the fastest celebrity. And he went, yeah, but I'm really disappointed. I said, why is that? He said, I've just looked at all my measurements. I only burnt 2,800 calories running the whole of the London Marathon. And he went and had a burger and chips afterwards. And his net deficit wasn't a net deficit, it was a net gain. So the point is, you can't outrun a poor diet. That's my point is, anyway. Not backed up by my panel, but it's difficult to outrun. See, I'm talking to elite sports people. This is the problem we've got. They can outrun a poor diet because they put so many hours in. But for most people that you're meeting, like me when I was obese, I was running for 1 hour a day, but I was putting on more calories in other words, I was in a calorie surplus because I was overcompensating for the exercise. And that's kind of what happens with most people. So there's also, if I'll come to another thing in a minute, let's do this one because we've got different diets around here. Because I don't know Victoria's diet that well, but I certainly know 3 of the panel's diets. How do you fuel exercise? And I'll just quickly caveat that because we were talking earlier on about Alzheimer's and the brain and how it likes ketones. James will testify for this. Ali, who's in the room, Nurse Gail will tell you that when we did our experiments where we were going 5 days without food, the running and then the cycling, one of the problems we had was actually getting enough sleep because the brain was wired. The brain seems to absolutely love ketones. I mean, it really, really does love ketones. So we were exercising on body fat and body fat alone, so therefore we're producing a lot of ketones. And because we're producing a lot of ketones, the brain was wired. I mean, it was like, I mean, I've never done drugs, but I guess that's what they were like. You know, it was amazing. In fact, to the point I know as a businessman, I normally wake up in the middle of the night and I think about something and I turn the light on, I write it down, and the next morning I wake up and I go, what a waste of time, what a load of nonsense I wrote in the middle of the night. But that week, everything I woke up and wrote down was some of the best things I'd ever written down. The brain loves ketones. So if the brain loves ketones, does the body love ketones? Oh my God, I've just loaded the question. What is the right fuel for exercise?
I think this harps back to exactly what we do. People ask me all the time what I'm doing now and what we actually do. I find it quite difficult to sometimes explain what it is we actually do. People come into us and they tend to have conditions, tend to be getting older. They're looking at for maybe some longevity, and they understand that there's something going on with what we do. And I think it's been fascinating listening to all the talkers this weekend and everybody who I watch online and all the literature that I take in, and seeing the different ways that people think, etc. And that slide you put up just before that was looking at all the different conditions and that there is and how the link between them. And I think this is what I think that we do, and I think what we're all doing, and it eventually comes on to the fuel thing. I treat the human body as a complex dynamical system. It's an entire system. I'm loath ever to break down the body into its component parts, these various systems, various organs, etc. This complex system is, and there's lots of complex systems in nature. For example, the weather is a complex system. There's no central controller. It's basically a self-organizing, self-regulating system. Lots of different constraints on that system that guide that system. It's inherent in biological systems, and it's something I'm really big on. Now, I view the human body in this manner as well. So you were discussing before about this, almost like this metabolic homeostasis. Well, if you look at this complex dynamical system the human body is, it's fascinating. What it's meant to do and what it does do, it creates its own carbohydrate, the gluconeogenesis, creates its own ketones, nutritional ketosis. It creates its own water, takes in hydrogen, oxygen, makes ATP, water, low deuterium water, makes its own hormones, makes its own antioxidants. What do we do as a society? We make synthetic, processed versions of all these foods and exogenously take those in. The human body requires essential amino acids and essential fats. There are no essential carbohydrates. So where do you get them? Beef. It's pretty simple. Mainly in their full, most bioavailable form. So you want this self-regulating system, you want to feed it, nourish it with the appropriate amino acids and fats, whatever means that is. We can argue about what that would be. I know what I think it is. And then you just want to leave it alone. and allow it to self-regulate. You want to create this self-regulating, complex, dynamical system. It can train, it can do anything you like within that. It creates an unbelievable stress. You just want to let it to go and do that. And that's I think, where your metabolic homeostasis lies. So when we have anyone coming into us, whether they have a bad back, need a hip knee replacement, whether they've got type 2 diabetes, cancer, Parkinson's disease, it's what is the level of metabolic homeostasis that you have right now? Because ultimately, if you can take them back to the self-regulating system, no matter what the condition is, and you can then teach them to be able to function, obviously, let's say on ketones, just allow the system just to go, and it regulates brilliantly. All the conditions disappear in the main, and they can just go on and do anything. Now, we've done loads of work, what you said, in terms of use of energy, and what that means. And we train fasted all the time, I have to say. My colleague Emma Prideaux is a national standard vet endurance runner. She's got the British record for 20 miles. She broke that record fasted. She's on the all-time list for the marathon, fasted. I strength train, fasted. And ever since I've fed my system the appropriate amino acids that it requires, my strength gains have gone through the roof. Now, I'm supposed to be getting weaker as I get older. You know, I'm getting on towards 50 now, but I'm now the strongest I've ever been, and it's a fascinating process. I know Shawn would probably agree with that, and so that's what I think we're all trying to do. We're trying to create this self-regulating, complex system. Feed it, leave it alone, let it get on with it, and it'll guide you.
It's brilliant. Thank you. Victoria, a second, I'm going to ask you how you're going to fuel your Atlantic row. Before you do, can you just stand up a second, Christian? Just want to show the back of your T-shirt. You wearing that one today? Yeah. Was it eat, beef and deadlift? There you go. There might be a clue. How are you going to fuel your row?
Pork scratchings. Really
Awesome.
great. In fact, one of my bike rides, I had nothing for 80 miles and didn't even think about food for 80 miles. And then I ran out of water. Water's important. Things like pork scratchings, biltong. There's some natural ketosis, so one of my sponsors for my row. So they do wet rations. And actually, whereas most people take dehydrated rations on the ocean, I will be taking some. I've found, out of all the dehydrated rations in the world, I've found 3. And so I've got 3 meals a week that will be dehydrated, and the rest will be my wet rations. So I'm taking pretty much wet rations for all my main meals. There's some amazing keto granolas out there now, so I'll be taking those. But adding, I need to take around 4,500 calories a day. So it's quite a lot of food to try and consume. I've worked out 3 different food nutrition strategies with various different amounts of carbohydrates. So I've got up to 50 grams a day of carbohydrates, 80 grams a day of carbohydrates, and 100 grams a day of carbohydrates. And I'll be trialling those this year as to which is the best strategy. But for me, it tends to be sort of, if I'm doing a 100-mile bike ride, I would either fuel it on absolutely nothing and just some water, or some pork scratchings, or a bit of salami or something.
But certainly, if you're trying to get that amount of calories on your row, that's quite a low percentage of carbs. So you're relying on mainly fat and protein.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah, very, very high fat, because that's all I need.
Brilliant.
But I shall be out there on the ocean for somewhere between 55 and 100 days. So it's maintaining something that's sustainable day after day after day for however long it takes.
Yeah, an interesting thing, of course, the easiest thing to actually take on something like that, because you haven't got all the deep freezers and the proper fridges and all that sort of stuff, would be to take the junk food, because that, the shelf life's quite good. I've crossed the Atlantic in a much easier, more comfortable way, and keeping fresh food and things like that. So the easiest option would have been just a carb load and just do carbs.
It's what most people do.
Yeah.
In fact, it would be fair to say I've had a lot of resistance from the ocean rowing race organisers on my nutrition approach.
Yeah, well done for standing up for yourself.
And the proof of the pudding, though, is in both how I feel as an athlete and as a human being. I'm also right smack bang in the middle of menopause as well, which creates its own challenges. But it's indescribably different to fuel on fats and proteins. And I would never go back to the high carb because the difference is like night and day. But I think you do have to experience it the other side to realise just how bad it is.
Yeah. Thank you. I'd like to ask Dr. Shawn Baker. Dr. Shawn Baker, the author of The Carnivore Code, how do you fuel a diet?
Well, I mean, you think the obvious answer, I said just eat a steak, but I mean, honestly, it's protein and some sort of energy. And so whether it's carbohydrates or fat, it's kind of up to you, really. Now, again, there's some specifics on what does the exercise mean? Are you trying to run a sub 2 hour marathon? Or are you just trying to run a marathon? You guys ran a marathon with no food. So obviously, you can fuel in many different ways. And I think that, one of the things we know is that if you're going to choose a low carb or a zero carb route, then I think protein becomes more important. And I mean the fat is there, but I mean, we know we become more efficient at gluconeogenesis over time with enough adequate protein in the diet. So I think you have to be mindful of both of those things. I've been able to successfully do some high level things on just meat alone, which I know James. I rode at 50. I rode a 114 500-meter row. Broke the world record on that one, just meat. And so it's possible. Now, again, what you choose to do, what you prefer to do, is really up to you. And I think outside of some select specific indications, like I said, maybe you have a Kenyan marathon runner, he's going to choose to use carbohydrates, and it depends on what you're used to in that regard too. If you're not, as an athlete, what I found, a lot of people switching over to low carbohydrate diets. Just doing your daily activities can, the adaptation period, a few weeks to a month or two. Sometimes the athletes, if they want to pursue this, it's going to take them 6 months to adapt in many cases. So it's just how long you adapt to doing that performance. But it really is highly dependent on who you are and what exercise you're trying to do.
Thank you very much. And then the reason for the question, just so everybody understands as well, it's brilliant, Shawn. Just so everybody understands, for James gives his opinion, is we know 88% of people are metabolically unwell. That's the stats. Only 12% are well. And yet we see a higher portion of that 12% actually now jogging and going to the gym. And if you look at add the memberships up of a gym chain called Pure Gym, and then The Gym, and then Virgin Gym, you add all the memberships up, about a third of adults are trying hard, and yet not a third of people are well. So I think the message I was trying to get across is that we were all told to carb load in the past. If you're going to do a marathon or a big row, or we were all told to carb load. I'm just saying that there's a mismatch then at the moment, and I think there's another way. Sorry, James. Exercise and food.
Yeah. Well, before I answer it, there's one point on Christians that there's an Argentinian steakhouse just near me, and they got a billboard. They look like one of those sort of fold-up sign things they bring out, and then it says, "Skinny people are easier to kidnap. Stay safe, eat steak." So I think you should probably go and tell them their advert's wrong. Actually, you get more skinny by just eating steak. And as for the wet rations, they're heavy. You're out there for 100 days. 100 days of wet rations. Use the desalinator and go powdered would be my advice.
Mathematics. My daily ration pack is 100 grams per day lighter than a carb burner's daily ration pack. And I'm a bit of a detail stats nerd, so I've worked it out to every gram.
I'll talk to you halfway.
And I'm solo as well, so I'm solo.
50 days
so
in out of 100, you may be rethinking it.
I have to take 85 days worth of food with me, so however long it takes me. But yeah,
I mean, the one thing that answering your question, Steve, that the human body is, as you've gone down the panel, is amazing as what it can do. When we did 5 days of no food on running and cycling, I was convinced it couldn't be done because where I came from was a carbohydrate junkie, and it just was so wrong to me that you could do that. But yet I've been to South Pole and didn't feel any weaker. But then we arrived at there and I'd lost 25 kilos, and yet your body's still performing. You don't realise there's no mirrors there till you get to the American base there, and you say, okay, blimey, I look a bit different. So the body is amazing, but I have to say, if I was marginal gains was mentioned, is that if I was performing at top end in I used to race the Olympics in 6 minutes, I would not do it without carbohydrate, just because the need to produce lactic acid and that top end does make a huge difference. But it's interesting. So my fastest marathon was done when I was lightest, funnily enough, but also when Steve mentioned the accident I had, I lost all sense of taste or smell from when I had got a massive crack in the head. And so food has a very different pleasure now. So actually, the foods which we talked about, food addiction and everything else earlier, the foods that smell nice, taste nice, they've all gone because I have no smell or taste. So actually, I probably live a far healthier diet, not through choice, but through actually, it makes no difference. I could eat the pizza or the box, and they both taste the same. And then you realise actually the weight does make a huge difference. Actually, what you need to fuel yourself is different, not because of. I would still have chosen to have gone carbohydrate way, but actually having a force change on you makes a big difference. And when we were doing that run and we're staying in hotels, that having everything cleared out of the hotel meant there was no choice that, believe me, as much as I wanted to do 5 days of that food, if there'd been biscuits in the room, I would have eaten them. But the fact you made sure there weren't meant the choice wasn't there, and therefore you're actually amazed what the body can do.
Yeah.
There's something else, James. I think it's another interesting one. You're talking about carbohydrate for performance. Say you're doing an actual 6-minute rowing race. I think one of the things that's is also forgotten sometimes within that competition environment, and I actually target this with people, and I do this a little bit myself, is the role of adrenaline in competition. And it acts like a rocket fuel for the central nervous system, and it's a very different thing when someone turns up on a race day, even to a park run or something like that on the day. We actually target things like that. We can have people who when we actually get people out running, we use indexes for heart rate and running speed and movement speeds and things like that. We've got indexes that can watch these indexes moving over time. It's a great indication of their aerobic condition improving, etc. But we can see the role of things such as adrenaline on a human system by the fact that you might have someone who can, let's say they're running at 75% of their max heart rate in training, and they're running, let's say, 9-minute miles. Okay, so they can actually trot along. They can do 9-minute miles, and it's cool, and that's where the training lies. But they're at 150 beats per minute, which would be, let's say they had a max of 200, it would be 75%. But on a race day, they'll stand on the line, and what I'd sometimes do is go, what's your heart rate? And they'll go, 150. So they're standing at 150, whereas they actually run all the aerobic training at 150 normally, but that's adrenaline, and it's absolute rocket fuel. And I think that's why I think and we've worked on this. It's been really interesting for you to experiment with this sometime. Is that we see people following, like, say, a low carbohydrate or a carnivore diet can absolutely fly, because it's adrenaline that seems to be one of the biggest contributors. It's almost like a rocket fuel for the central nervous system, and I think that system regulates brilliantly when you're on something such as a carnivore diet, and I think it's a huge benefit.
Can I just quickly pick up on that with a explanation and a question? So most people know this anyway, but just for clarity, the reason we could all do those long trips, in theory, is that you have an anaerobic threshold. Below your anaerobic threshold, which is about 75-80% of the maximum heart rate, your body's more than happy to burn body fat. It doesn't need to go to your glycogen stores. It's happy to burn your fat. But then the theory goes, if you go above that, then you're going to run out of sugar. Your glycogen stores will run out quite quickly. But are you saying then that actually, the more you learn this stuff, the more you realise you don't know anything? You're saying then that adrenaline will kick in even if you're out of sugar, and because you're a fat burning machine, and the adrenaline of a sports event, when you need that extra kick, will kick in regardless of your fuel source?
Yeah, it's a fight or flight response. It's the body's fight or flight response. It's like a sympathetic nervous system response, and it's that state in which people can pick up cars and that sort of thing and save people, and it's unbelievable what it does. And that's one of the main drivers. I think we think it's carbohydrate, but it's there's a release of carbohydrate in the system. The body makes itself anyway in that situation. We see a lot of the time, if we have continuous glucose monitors on people, for example, their highest spike quite often is in an adrenaline-fueled race situation. They'll set off, they'll do like a 5K or something, and you'll look at the spine, it's the highest spike they've ever had. And so it's the body making its own. It's part of that sympathetic system. So that kicks in, and you can just do things you could not normally do. And that's why we're also always slightly wary with a lot of the training systems that are out there and how high intensity they are, without the necessary low intensity or slightly lower intensity activity that bubbles away underneath it. Because I think what people are chasing is sport-specific conditioning, and so they'll do sport-specific intensity. The problem is you're doing it without the effect of the adrenaline, because you can't find that all the time. So you really want to have that, spend most of your time much easier than that, and then sometimes hit it at the right times. And so that's the kind of thing that we do. We see huge adaptations from that over time, and people can have really, really long-term progressions over multiple weeks, months, years, for example. And even if I'm picking stuff up myself, I tend to go to a different location from my own studio and to somewhere where I'll be around other people, where I get a slightly more competitive situation, a bit annoyed and a wee bit more agitated, and it's unbelievable. I reckon it's probably worth 30 kilos on my deadlift or something like that. So yeah, so I'd spend most of my time not like that, and then sometimes then I do it. See.
Does that answer why my personal best deadlifts is always when you're standing there glaring at me, not at home? Thank you. I didn't know that. I want to just quickly, a bit of a loaded question, because Christian and James and myself have been working on something called Mars. And Mars, we're trying to say for longevity. You see people jogging when they're probably overweight, maybe shouldn't be jogging to get their weight down. You see people weight training that probably aren't doing the technique right. We also forget that a lot of people will go and hit the gym, but then be sedentary for the rest of the day, and not stand up, walk around the office, and so on. So, and also the way we sit, which I'm not sitting very well because I'm not on my balance disc, but stance. So we think that life is about, for fitness for longevity, 4 elements, combining getting your moving more, some aerobics, appropriate aerobics, resistance, which you can see from my wonderful panel, must all weight train very, very hardly, and stance, not underestimating the stance. But I'll go, if I can, to Dr. Shawn, and talk us through, as we age, we're supposed to all lose muscle. I know you and I are similar age, and James is catching up, and Christian's still 22 apparently. You guys just seem getting fitter and fitter. We're supposed to lose 1% muscle mass every year. You guys, all of you, just look fantastic. Are we putting more emphasis on resistance than on aerobics as we get older, or what? I mean, what's your secret?
Well, I mean, first of all, I would say that, you know, when we're talking about longevity, I think, you know, the biggest thing you can do is no longer be sedentary. I mean, when we're talking about exercise specifically, that's going to give you the biggest gain. So going from sedentary to non-sedentary, just walking, is going to be a huge, huge discriminator. And I think, you know, irrespective of your dietary choices, one of the main differentiators from those that age well and those that don't is, again, going to be exercise. And I think you kind of listed some of the components. Obviously, strength training is important to allow you to function. There's all kinds of studies that show that longevity is tied to various aspects of strength. The VO2 max is important, you know, for protecting from cardiovascular disease. But, you know, again, the nutritional strategies you employ, I think, you know, we need to focus on protein as we get older. I think the strength thing, I mean, I'm 56 and I'm stronger at 56 than I was at 46. And I wasn't weak at 46. I was training. I've been training for 43 years. And so continuing to make progress, even as traditionally you would think we associate getting older with necessarily getting weaker. And, you know, I suppose that happens to some degree, but not to the degree we see it now. And I think it's important to realize you don't have to be an Olympic champion or a world champion or anything to improve your longevity. You just need to be in the top third. You know, if you're in the top third of your respective cohort for strength, fitness, that's going to give you probably most of the benefits you're going to have, and beyond that becomes a mental disorder to want to be a world champion. I mean, it really is. And so I think just getting to that top third, and the bar is not very high. You look across, you go look across the population, and you say, am I stronger than 2 out of 3 people, or fitter than 2 out of 3 people? And it's not that hard. It really is a pretty low bar, and so that's a problem. So I think that's that's incredibly important, and it's something that, obviously, as much as I preach about diet, I'm just as passionate about. We need to be, once you fix your diet, once you start to get healthy, you need to progress to that next stage of being fitter and more capable, because that goes to quality of life as well.
That's a really good point. And I don't know how many of you are aware of a study that was done, I can't remember the details, from the 1930s, 1940s, and in London they looked at the bus conductors compared to the bus drivers. So same working environment, but one's sitting down all day, one's going up and down the stairs, and they tracked about 40,000, I think. Somebody will probably know better than me. And they tracked the 40,000, and the heart attack rate of the bus conductor was half that of the driver, just because he was standing up all day and going up the stairs. And I think probably movement is, avoiding that sedentary lifestyle. James, I know you've got some stats about how, as parents, we all seem to even drive our kids to school when they live like 200 meters away, and how sedentary parents and kids as a nation have become. Yeah,
I mean, that's exactly right. The amount we move each day is getting progressively less year on year. And if in terms of adult population, that the statistic last year was that 80% of the adults in this country don't walk a mile a year continuously. So that's 20 minutes. So it's and so. Sorry, can I just pick you up on that? Say that again. The average adult in the UK. 80%. Sorry, 80%. 80% of adults in the UK don't walk a mile continuously once a year. So only 20% of the country walk a mile continuously once a year. And so then that it does equate to. So in 1950. 85% of kids living within 400 metres of school walked, and last year only 50% walked. And so you think we can see the school, but yet they get driven there. And then that's got parents are going to work, but it's just how much less we're moving now as part of society. And then that also comes down to everything we spoke about earlier about how the diet's changed, and then you have people in low-income areas that live in sort of food deserts where all they're surrounded by are the processed food. So it's a sort of spiralling downwards that we've got to stop somewhere. Yeah, and I just want to quickly touch on the food addiction, just quickly. Thanks, Sam. Quick one on the food addiction, because hearing it from Olympian, I think you're going to be. I was blown away about this. Tell them about the story with the
ice cream and the Olympic Village, because that for me, we talk about addiction and how one of the problems with addiction, you see food, you eat it, and one of the best ways is to just avoid it. Tell me that story.
Well, no, we had, so in one Olympics I was at, we were unbeaten for the 3 years leading into it, and then we lost our last race before it, and then we had to have an honest chat about what we were doing, and we realised that we needed to lose some weight between us. And we in those last 6 weeks, we lost probably about 25 kilos between the four of us, of which one bloke was about 18. And at the Olympic Village, the Olympics is, it functions obviously a lot of sponsorship, and some of that is McDonald's is a big sponsor, as were I think Wolves was a big ice cream thing at Sydney, and they'd have the Olympic food hall is amazing in that it's basically amazing when you finish racing, because it's got to feed 10,000 athletes an hour every hour for 24 hours a day. That's its remit, and every athlete, every country has to have food that they're used to. So it's got, you come in, if you race in the first week, which my sport was in the first week, second week you're out all night having fun, and then you come back and you can go, right, I'm going to the Greek section for a kebab, followed by the McDonald's in the middle of the food hall. It's perfect. When you're racing, it's not useful, especially if some of your crew have a real discipline for training but not for eating. And so with me and our coach, we had to work out a route from our accommodation to the village that didn't go past a bucket of Magnums. Because basically you could leave the food hall having had your lunch, and then walk 200 metres, you could pick up a Magnum, and then by the time you got to the bin, throw the wrapper away, you could pick up another one. And so me and Jürgen had to find a route that was a Magnum-free zone, and then, considering the guy who's very well qualified and fairly intelligent, he believed as there was only one route to the village, to the food hall, and if he'd found the Magnum bin, then it'd have been bad. And the other thing that you get at Olympics, which is interesting walking in here with the sort of what's real food and not food, is you obviously Coke are a big sponsor. You get a which is what if imagine if you had this in real life, you had like a magic token that works in every vending machine in the city for free. So basically you can get Coke or Powerade or anything that Coke make for nothing. And so luckily one of my crewmates, he didn't realise until the second week that what his voucher got him. But it's like, can you imagine giving, also, as saying that, you're vaguely addicted by nature if you're going to that level of extreme in anything. And so you've got 12,000 fairly addicted people given a sugar voucher. Yeah. If they work out what it is, it's going to be a whole world of problems.
I think the thing that fascinated me with that was going back to the last panel, what a challenge you've got about food addiction. You've got these people that have given up everything for 4 years to train day and night, compromise family, compromise friends, compromise everything just to win those medals. And yet they still find it hard at the last minute, even if they've avoided the ice cream for 4 years. But the fact you're walking past it and it's for free, it's hard to have that discipline, even when you're an Olympian gold medalist, and I think that's why Jen and the panel before have got such a hard job to battle this addiction.
But the one serious point of which I found very useful, and before our Olympics we had were. It's generally at the end of the year. So we had an agreement between, I used to run a 4-man boat. The agreement between us was that our last alcoholic drink would be on New Year's Eve until the day of the Olympic final. So we wouldn't drink for 9 months. And which, some people, that would be a real mental block for them for doing it. For us, because your dreams are someone else's hands and their dreams and yours, we committed to each other as much as ourselves. And after I'd got knocked off the bike and neurologist, we were talking about recovery, and when I was out of hospital, he said, don't drink for 6 months. And for me, I'd done that, I could cope with that, whereas for people that, someone gets a brain injury, they're working on a building site, they get smacked in the head with an RSJ, and they work bloody hard all week, and they go and mates have some beers on Friday and Saturday night. For them to be told 6 months is so different, and I think that's a big part of here is what habits you're built into. I mean, we used to train sort of 6 or 7 hours a day. So since I've stopped training an hour a day, it seems like you're not training. Whereas for people who've done nothing, training an hour a day is, well, you might as well tell them to go up Everest. And then for me, not eating carbohydrate, I just don't understand how you can survive. because that's what we were told. Be it, when I was 18 and there wasn't really that much sports science around, you go from to full-time training. The coach would say, if you walk past the shop, buy a pack of biscuits and just eat it because you're going to run out of it. See, that's now. But then that was like, that's quite sensible. But that is what habits you get into. And now I can I can drink as much as the next man, but I can't stop it. Cocoa Pops, no chance. So I'm going to be buried in them.
Got 5 minutes. And Christian, just pick up on that quickly, because you had that as a professional football player. You thought you were eating enough calories, and you were told one day to go and eat something quite particular, weren't you?
Well, yeah, that was quite early on in my career, actually. It was at Dundee United. It was about 1990 or 1991 when I was just starting, and we had to fill in a questionnaire on our nutrition. We had nutritionists in then, which was seemed quite an advanced thing for a club like Dundee United and just quite up in Scotland. And but I filled in this questionnaire and I was really honest on it. And at the time, I would drink the old orange Lucozade and Mars bars and things. It was a very high carbohydrate pasta all the time, rice and things. So I filled this in, and I got the nutritionist was in there, and I got the feedback back after it, and they said that it was great, except I was probably about 2 bags of Dailly mixture short per day of fueling and that was my 5 years later I've had 5 knee operations and all sorts of issues from then. I had to deal with that for the rest of my career.
So I think all the nutritionists in the room, you've come a long, long way. I think that's, you really have all come a long, long way. I'd like to thank the panel. We've got 1 or 2 minutes left. So the key thing is we want longevity. We've heard a lot about insulin resistance and fake foods, and Dr. Ali Ibrahim said it brilliant today. A few other people said it wonderfully, that we shouldn't even use the word food. I mean, it's food-like substances. And we in certain ways, certainly us amateurs can't outrun a poor diet, or as James says, outrun your fork, because we seem to overeat, overcompensate when we do those exercises. So the diet is really, really, really important. But maybe one last word. Most people in the room are doctors, physicians, nutritionists, people that are then going to go out and help other people get healthier and live healthier for longer. Maybe one last tip around. It could be food or food and sport together. What's the one takeaway advice that we can give people to go and spread the word that you'd probably want spreading? It's the role of, I suppose it's just trying to get your carbohydrates down. You really want to create that self-regulating system like I spoke about before. I mean, when we have people coming in, they have lots and lots of metabolic health conditions. I suppose in some ways it's like in their eyes they're almost going to the doctors, but we're looking at metabolic health related root cause and the physiology that underpins that. And the first and foremost, we're looking at their body composition, and then we're looking at what they eat. And it's so important that they get the essential amino acids and fats, and over time that stops you feeling hungry. Your entire hormonal system self-regulates, and you don't have that same feeling that you require any more exogenous carbohydrate. It's difficult to explain to people at the time because they feel like they could never be off of it, but once your system regulates, that hypothalamic system just regulates, and you don't feel like you require any of those anymore. In fact, I'm at this stage now myself where I was a huge carb eater. I couldn't have thought about getting through the day without muffins and cakes and stuff at one stage. But if you were to put that in front of me now, I would not even remotely want to go. It wouldn't feel like it at all. So that's really the main thing. It's about perhaps having an adequate system for putting that into place and an environment for it as well.
it's fine saying don't have it, but I think you have to actually physically tell people what to do and show them what that means, and then give them numbers based on that. So we watch the strength increasing with the exercise we use, and we watch the aerobic systems developing, and we watch them getting leaner. So the waist gets leaner. We're developing things like, you talked about waist to height ratio the other day. We're looking at things such as waist to strength ratio. So, if you've got certain waist, we can look at your ratio compared to what you can pick up. And obviously you can be very lean, but you can have very poor muscle protein synthesis and can't pick anything up, so your ratio's poor. So this is about being lean and about being healthy, but it's giving people numbers on that and giving them a specific thing to do is actually quite important. I think that's where we come in with that.
My takeaway, I think, certainly for me this year, and this year is the first year as a woman at 56, the first year I've ever done any proper weight training. I've no idea why. I've not before now. But that's been quite revolutionary for me this year. Even in all my Ironman races, I don't really do any weight training per se. Obviously, you're cycling up hills, you're building muscles to a certain degree, and running and swimming, particularly a lot of upper body strength perhaps, but weight training per se has been a real eye-opener for me this year, so I'm actually quite excited to see what I can create of this old body. We'll see. Christian says it's anti-aging, so I'll run with that one. There you go. So hopefully next year I'll look younger.
As you get older, you get weaker, you get stronger.
Yeah, there you go. I've learnt a lot today as well, but weight training for me this year has been quite exciting. It's nice to learn new things as we get older, I think, and never stop learning. But particularly for me, the weight training this year has been really interesting.
I think the question you kind of mentioned, with healthcare providers in the room, and I think most of us realize this by now, but nutrition is probably the most powerful medicine we have. And if we for almost any condition, I always tell people good nutrition is always going to be a positive. So we have to do that, and then we have to define what good nutrition is. We know what bad nutrition is. All this ultra processed garbage that I think was called a recreational drug, which I think is just a wonderful analysis of what we're actually doing. And so then what do you replace it with? And so when I say, well, don't eat the cakes and the ice creams and things like that, well, what do you want me to eat? And then if it's just salads and things like that, you're going to have a hard time with compliance. And so that's why, as you know, I'm a huge proponent of animal foods. And so I think you have to replace it with something that, one, people enjoy, and two, provides them the nutrition so they can have satiety, so they don't continue to fall back into those problematic foods. And it goes to food addiction as well. If you're not nutritionally satisfied, you're going to be craving all these other things. And the food industry is very happy for that, because they've got these very hyper-palatable, highly engineered foods that are engineered to be addictive, basically. And so we have to number one, realize that food is the top 5 reasons for solutions out there, and then beyond that, and of course the exercise part of it, I think, comes secondary. You can't just tell somebody who's overweight and in pain to just go out and start running or rowing or whatever. They're just not going to do it because they're in too much pain. So you have to address that issue first, and then as their body starts to feel better, their inflammation goes down, then they're capable of doing that.
You'd have liked. I was around at a friend's for dinner, and you'd have liked this comment. We were around there, and his wife's vegan, so obviously he's vegan as well. He said to us, "Can you go get some beers out of the fridge?" And then me and my other mate went there and opened the fridge door, and he goes, "Shit, that's the food that food eats." Which is, I thought that came to me as you were doing it then. In terms of a takeaway,
no takeaways, James.
That is also true. In terms of something that of the lesson that you can learn, and the one thing that I recently became a pet owner, a dog owner, and it's fascinating. You have something that doesn't reject any food you give it. And so you're in control totally of the nutrition intake of, apart from what they eat when they're out, of that animal. And yet 2/3 of our pets in this country are overweight because we feed them more than they need. And when I got the dog off the breed, I was saying, what do I need to do to feed it properly? And they go, little thing, only 2 months old, and she got me, said, stand over it. It says, whatever his age is, that's his shape. And it's just fascinating that actually something that we can control, we're actually being quite cruel to them by giving them more than they say, oh, they need it, they're happy, they're this. Actually, they know what they need. So I think we probably were we eat more than we need. And things I've done with you realise what the body can survive on that I thought would be impossible, and how it can still function. And when we're doing the cycling and running, I thought one thing I was really worried about was being mentally sharp when, being so not having eaten anything, but it was exactly the opposite. Okay, I'm not that sharp normally, but it was a low bar, but I didn't feel it got worse.
Brilliant, you are sharp. Thank you, James. I'm sure you'll have lots of questions. I'm hoping they'll all mingle around and you can ask them any questions. I'll just finish on one thing, and just a quick one, and that was yesterday. Somebody said, I think it might have been my good friend Patrick said, we're the only species that are overweight. You look around, pandas are supposed to be that shape, giraffes are supposed to be that shape, elephants, that's what they were designed to be. We're the only species that aren't the shape we're designed. And I was going to say, no, you're wrong, actually, because there are several species that aren't the shape they're supposed to be. It's us humans and those that we feed. And if a lion eats a lion's diet, and a tiger and a giraffe, they look like they're supposed to. The only things that don't look like they're supposed to is anybody that eats corporate food. That's it. Thank you.